So happy Capitalism Day, everyone. That is what I like to call Black Friday, by the way. Capitalism Day. Survival of the fittest. True capitalism out there. I mean, really, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's the time of the year when all the stores try to outcompete each other, which is capitalism, try to sell their products or services for a special deal to the most people, which is capitalism. And you know what? I, for one, celebrate it. Actually, I slept in. I did not go and get the early deals. We did some shopping later. But I just like the idea of calling it Capitalism Day. So yesterday we gave thanks. We had family time. We ate too much food. And today we spent our money. Now, it should be more about giving and Christmas and the real, but today's Capitalism Day. And I guess it really goes for the whole week because tomorrow is Small Business Saturday, I think. And then Monday is Cyber Monday. So it's Capitalism Weekend. Did any of you celebrate Capitalism Weekend? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. Yes, I am live right here on Capitalism Day. I would not miss a live show on Capitalism Day. No, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. And I'm joined by producing for me tonight, which is good because there was no one else who could do it, and I asked him last minute, and he did, so I'm very, very thankful. Speaking of Thanksgiving, Tom Benson, how are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine, and we're doing exactly what one would expect somebody to do on Capitalism Day. We're working for money.
This is exactly what you are.
As small as it may be.
You are. I don't even get paid for this. I do this just for fun.
Oh, boy.
On Capitalism Day. So, I know that's like communism right there. But and I'm also and I also got two of my best friends in the control room watching me, Danielle and Jeff, two of my best friends, and now it's a lot of pressure, even though they listen to every show anyway, and there's a lot of people listening out, in Radio Land, just having them watch me. It's just so much. Oh, she's really watching me. By the way, we are on Facebook Live as well. So if you want to see everything going on Facebook, you can just follow. You can friend me on Facebook, Michael Yaffee. Just search Michael Yaffee. Send me a friend request. I'll friend you. We're also on the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and the News Radio 102.5 WFLA Facebook page as we are broadcasting live on all of those platforms. And I want your comments on everything we talk about as well. So I just went to CNN.com, and there seems to be some interesting news coming out today. I don't know if you heard about this, Tom.
What's that?
Jill Stein has raised a ton of money, the Green Party. Mm-hmm. Jill Stein's psycho, by the way. But
yes, she is.
Yes, she is.
But I was thinking the word troublemaker, but
psycho, I think, works better. But great. Now I got friends on. By the way, this is totally side note. But now I got friends on Facebook saying, "When do I get to go on the show?" So. But no, Jill Stein and the Green Party has raised a ton of money and filed Friday for a recount in Wisconsin for the presidential election. Mm-hmm. Do they think they won by mistake?
I don't.
Why is the Green Party? I mean, are they trying to get Hillary elected?
I don't know.
But they're filing for a recount because there was that report earlier this week by some computer scientists who really just didn't want Trump to win. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, there must be hacking or something in these areas. That's why Trump won. There should be recounts. And so now Jill Stein has taken that up, and they had to raise $2 million, and now they're trying to raise $7 million to get a recount.
I'd like to know who's funding all this, George Soros. Oh, excuse me.
Did you have something in your throat there?
I didn't mean that.
The George Soros cough that came out there. Yeah, I know. So, and this whole thing brings up because what we're hearing now from everyone on the left and the Democrats who are very upset. They're all protesting because Trump won, even though they're going to find out. I tell people, wait until he gets into office at least. Wait until he does something before you protest because, Trump's probably a lot more liberal than you're all thinking. He's actually kind of a Democrat in a lot of ways, so I'm not really sure what you're all freaking out about.
But you certainly can't be discouraged by his pick so far, being surrounded by certain people.
Well, that's good, even though a lot of them are considered insiders, I guess, which they say is not like draining the swamp. But no, I've liked his pick so far. I don't know why he doesn't pick John Bolton as Secretary of State. Some people say he's too much of a war hog. I like him. I've actually read his book, and I've heard him on Fox many times. I like him a lot. But there's talk of Mitt Romney. There's still talk out there. I never thought this would happen, that Mitt Romney will get that spot, Secretary of State. And now there are reports out there, probably from the Giuliani people, who think that for Romney to get it, he has to publicly apologize to Trump for all his negative comments he made against Trump. Do you think this is actually going to happen?
If I were him, I would not apologize unless I had a lock on the appointment. Because if you apologize or regret what you said, then you don't get the position. You're embarrassed.
Yes, and you're embarrassed. I can't imagine going out and apologizing. So what do you all think out there, by the way? You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 or comment on Facebook Live about Trump's cabinet appointments. I mean, we all know Kellyanne Conway is really president. I mean, we all know this, right? That we have the first woman president. It's Kellyanne Conway.
You talk about a smart woman, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She has been, I don't think she has stopped smiling since Trump won. I think she's probably still in disbelief as well.
Somebody asked her what she thought of the Democrats not going for Trump's initial appointments to the cabinet. And she says, well, as far as the Democrats are concerned, if your name isn't Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, or Hillary Clinton, they're going to be opposed to it anyway. So what?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, why are they act like this stuff has never happened before. It's the same every 4 years, every 8 years. When we get a new president, they appoint people that have their values. Trump's not any different. So we'll get more into a talk about his appointments. We'll get more into talk about Trump and his Thanksgiving message. But I wanted to focus more on the Electoral College. Now, for the past 2 weeks, we've heard the debate over and over again about, should it be Electoral College? It should be popular vote. You know, pretty much Democrats saying popular vote now, Republicans saying keep the Electoral College. I'm for the Electoral College because I don't want to nationalize the vote. I want to keep the states control of the voting process, and there's a lot of reasons to do that. But I looked at the popular vote numbers today because I keep hearing that Hillary is gaining more and more in the popular vote. And so as of today on CNN, I went to CNN.com, Trump has 46.6% of the popular vote with 62,139,188 votes. And Clinton has 63,964,956 votes. So it's like 1.5 million votes, almost 2 million votes in that area, that Clinton is ahead, even though she lost the Electoral College by a lot, 232 to 290. And I'm thinking, how is this even possible? This is crazy because Gore won the popular vote, but it wasn't like this. It was very close in that election in 2000 versus Bush. This is kind of a big difference. So I'm thinking, how in the world is this possible? How is this actually happening? Well, I looked at some states, and it's pretty much all coming from 2 states, which you all probably guess out there, California and New York. And I looked at the popular vote count in California, for instance. Clinton has 61.6% of the vote in that state. She has 7,230,699 votes versus Trump, who has 3,841,134 votes. So that tells you right there, I mean, that's over 3 million votes right there in just one state. That tells you right there that most of the popular vote difference is coming from California. And then you look at New York, and it's not as big of a gap, but there's still big a gap as well. Because Clinton in New York has 58.8% of the vote with 4,143,874 votes versus Trump, who has 2,640,570 votes. So it tells you that the popular vote difference is all just from those two states.
Which brings us back to Wisconsin. If you do a recount in Wisconsin and find that the Electoral College should have went another way, for Hillary, obviously, what does she gain? How many electoral votes are there in Wisconsin?
It would have to be more than Wisconsin.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Because they just announced Michigan. He won Michigan by 10,000 votes. So they would have to flip because he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida, which is a pretty big deal, and Ohio. So that's a big reason why Trump won. But the biggest thing that just stuns me, and I don't know if it stuns any of you out there, but how is it that you live in two different states, and when you enter those states, and especially the urban areas of those states, that you're automatically going to vote Democrat in those areas? That people are so one-sided in those two states. What happens when you enter the state? Is there some kind of computer mechanism that gets into your brain and brainwashes you and makes you vote Democratic when you enter New York City or LA or Sacramento? It's stunning to me. And maybe the reason it is stunning to me is because I live in Orlando, and I feel like Orlando is pretty split. But I would think it would be kind of split because we're not mindless zombies. We live in a free country where you can think for yourselves. So I'm really trying to understand why this is happening. Why, especially with those two states and especially the big cities, you are automatically going to vote Democrat. But you live in anywhere else in the country and it's pretty split. And in some places, you're automatically going to vote Republican. And I'm thinking, does where you live in America today, in the U.S. today, does it really make that much of a difference how you vote? Because I can't imagine if I lived in L.A. today that I would all of a sudden want to vote Democrat. I can't imagine that. But why does that happen? Somebody give me the answer. Somebody give me the answer because I don't understand it. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons we could talk about, which I guess we can in the next segment. If you want to call and give me the answer as well, you can. 407-916-5400, and you can text to 23680, or you can comment on Facebook Live as well. But somebody give me the answer. Why? When you enter the state of California, I mean, can we just saw that state off and just let it go into the sea? I mean, we do get some decent movies, although all the Marvel movies are being shot in Atlanta, in Georgia. So maybe I don't do that. I have a comment on Facebook Live, by the way, from David, who says, I think liberal-minded people are drawn to those states. Is that what it is? Is it just you're liberal and you're there's a force, there's a magnetic force that draws you to California, that you have to live in California? Or is it that Republicans and conservatives that grew up in California or New York have to leave because their leftist policies are destroying the economy in those places and they just have to get out of there? What is the answer? Now, after the break, Tom Benson, actually, we talked about this before the break. He had some interesting takes on this as well. We talked about it before the show. So we'll talk about that after the break. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, and we will be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com.
So, ironically, Trump tweeted out in 2012 that he was for the popular vote, that he thought the Electoral College was a travesty to democracy. But they asked him about this recently the New York Times asked him about this, and he, of course, likes the Electoral College now. Gee, I wonder why. But he actually said, look, if we were under a popular vote system, he's like, I would have campaigned completely different. I would have pretty much been in New York and California and maybe Texas the whole time and wouldn't have needed to campaign anywhere else, and it would have been completely different. So who's to say that if the popular vote was a thing, that Trump wouldn't have won anyway? Because one, both candidates would have campaigned totally different, which is a big reason why to keep the Electoral College, because it's supposed to be about states' rights as well. We are a republic of United States. And by having a popular vote, you would give a lot of power to very few states. which could be a very dangerous thing. They already have a lot of power with as many electoral votes as they get, but they would get even more power. But the other thing is, I wonder if a lot of Republicans in the states of like California and New York just don't vote because they figure, why bother? It doesn't even matter. These states always go Democrat. So that's another thing. So this whole, Hillary won the popular vote. She's the voice of the people. I mean, it shows that Donald Trump doesn't have a mandate of the people, but it also shows, it's not necessarily wouldn't have been the same anyway.
I would say out of the urban areas, Trump has a mandate.
Really? Out of the urban areas?
Aside from that.
Outside of the urban areas.
Middle America, the Midwest.
The Rust Belt, especially.
Sure.
That's where a lot of it comes from. Yeah. But why then does the Democrat Party dominate in those urban areas? Why is that?
Birds of a feather flock together.
Oh, words of wisdom.
They have
words of wisdom.
They have like interests. A lot of them are minorities, more unions.
Yeah, that's true. Unions and minorities, that's a big deal.
More dependent upon government benefits or assistance.
I think that's a big deal. The Democrat Party has basically, and it's amazing to me because they've also ruined a lot of these big cities economically. But the governments are so entangled in those cities that the people, the businesses, the unions are so dependent on big government that they probably can't even understand the idea of small government.
Well, also those people are in power. They want to remain in power, regardless of what happens on a national level. Yes. So that's why they support who they support. I mean, look at Detroit. Detroit's been a mess for decades, and it's been a big Democratic-controlled city. Yeah, I got a text from someone who said basically the same thing. He says, those silly urban liberal areas pull deadweight types because they know the freebies, they get gravy train, but it also comes from terrible public schools, high crime rate, and massive corruption. It's hard for me to discount that when you see the numbers are so one-sided in those areas. It's kind of sad to me. I like the idea of a little bit of diversity of thought. Even if, it'd be nice if my side won. I want my side to win, of course, but the idea that it's so completely one-sided just kind of astounds me. So I was talking about Capitalism Day, and because today's Black Friday, which I call Capitalism Day, and I forgot to point out some great deals that you can get. It turns out that Donald Trump's online shop is offering specials for Black Friday. So I'm doing a very important public service because I know all of you out there want a Donald Trump Make America Great Again ornament hat. Who doesn't want? And it's lined with gold, with 24 karat gold. So you can get that Christmas ornament hat on Donald Trump's online. It's Capitalism Day. It's Black Friday. Trump's still got to make money, I guess. I'm actually very curious where the money goes. I think it goes to his campaign. I don't know. But says Trump sent out an email, to all of his followers. It says, President-elect Trump loves a great deal. Use coupon code Black Friday to get 30% off your favorite items at the official store for Trump gear. This is pro-business president-elect, I think. And how much is he asking for the ornament? I think let's see. It's $150. There you go. $150, or it says it's a hat says Make America Great Again. Black Friday matters. I saw that earlier on a site. Black Friday matters. Happy Capitalism Day. It says one thing Trump couldn't do, profit from the hats, T-shirts, yard signs, and other items the campaign has already purchased. That merchandise is a campaign asset and can't be converted into personal use. I don't think he's trying to profit individually off this stuff. But I thought I would point this out to everyone out there, all the Trump fans who are out there. You can get, your wife. You want to get your wife a Donald Trump Christmas ornament? Would you get your wife that, Tom? Not at all. No. All right. I don't think if I somehow miraculously get a girlfriend this year, I
I don't think I'm going to give her that.
Just buy a hat and hang it on the tree. Hats are, what, $20?
And write "Make America Great Again" on it. That's what I'm going to do. All right, in the next segment, speaking of Donald Trump, he did something yesterday. That's a pretty smart move. And he's been doing this a lot. I think you're going to see it a lot in his presidency. And believe it or not, it's what Barack Obama did that worked. 407-916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores.
Welcome back to Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, and I just got a question on Facebook. Actually, a very good question. I had to do a little research on it. Asked me, can Trump still run his business, or can a sitting president still run their business while in office? And actually, there is no laws against it. He can theoretically still be the CEO of his company while he's a sitting president. Now, obviously, that brings up a ton of ethical dilemmas. And if he uses taxpayer money to go directly into his businesses, then yes, that's illegal. And there's a bunch of ethical breaches and all that stuff. And apparently there was some talk that he's already kind of blurred that line because he was talking to, I forget what it was. It was the president of another country trying to convince that person to allow a Trump business to open up in that area.
Well, yeah, but he's not president yet. He's in a transition. He's He's ramping up his government and supposedly ramping down his involvement in business.
It's still kind of Clinton Foundation-esque, when you start doing that, when you start using your influence as president or president-elect to help promote your business. So it's going to be pretty hard for him. So, but to answer your question, I thought that was pretty interesting. Speaking of Donald Trump, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and Donald Trump, he's already put out one video about his first 100 days, which conspicuously didn't talk about the wall, which a lot of people thought that was interesting. But he put out a video yesterday, a special Thanksgiving message, and it's actually really good. And I really like that he's doing this, especially with the state of the media today, which we'll talk about. But first, let's play Trump's Thanksgiving message.
We are very blessed to call this nation our home, and that's what America is. It is our home. It's where we raise our families, care for our loved ones, look out for our neighbors, and live out our dreams. It's my prayer that on this Thanksgiving, we begin to heal our divisions and move forward as one country, strengthened by shared purpose and very, very common resolve. In declaring this national holiday, President Lincoln called upon Americans to speak with one voice and one heart. That's just what we have to do. We've just finished a long and bruising political campaign. Emotions are raw and tensions just don't heal overnight. It doesn't go quickly, unfortunately. But we have before us the chance now to make history together, to bring real change to Washington, real safety to our cities, and real prosperity to our communities, including our inner cities. So important to me and so important to our country. But to succeed, we must enlist the effort of our entire nation. This historic political campaign is now over. But now begins a great national campaign to rebuild our country and to restore the full promise of America for all of our people. I'm asking you to join me in this effort. It's time to restore the bonds of trust between citizens, because when America is unified, there is nothing beyond our reach, and I mean absolutely nothing. Let us give thanks for all that we have, and let us boldly face the exciting new frontiers that lie ahead. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
So that's Donald Trump's Thanksgiving message, straight to YouTube, straight to his social media. Doesn't have to do a press conference, doesn't have to go through the usual media cycles, doesn't have to get airtime on TV to do it, just goes straight to the people. And can I tell you, that's brilliant moves by Trump. And by the way, it's something that Obama did. He didn't do it as much as Trump. You know, Trump loves to be on Twitter, loves to be on Facebook, loves to be on social media, loves to be on YouTube. Obama wasn't quite that much into it. But Obama did that a lot. He would do White House messages straight to YouTube, and it's pretty smart. But I think Trump doing it, and he's going to do it a lot, and if he continues to talk directly to the American people and directly lay out his plans, you're talking about a connection between not only him and people, but him and the individual voter. It's really a smart move, and a lot of people are criticizing it. Oh, he's just trying to get around press conferences and not answer questions. He's just trying to control his message. I got that one. All presidents try to control their message. Don't give me this stuff that, oh, it's any different with Trump. All presidents try to control their message. But Trump was on, I couldn't criticize Trump too much because he was on 60 Minutes right after he won. He was on other news answering questions for reporters right after. So I'm not going to criticize him too much on that. But a lot of people, this has brought up the debate for a lot of people on the state of mainstream media in this country. Because a lot of people like what Trump's doing and think that Trump should pretty much just ignore the mainstream media because they have become so biased, so against conservatism, Republicans, and Donald Trump. And I have to say, I'm not one who criticizes, quote unquote, the media as much because there's so much media out there now that it's hard to say what mainstream is. But you look at New York, you look at CNN, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, those are all biased. Let's just get to the point. Those are all biased. And Trump got a lot of criticism for meeting with them and apparently saying they were biased and everything. But more and more I'm noticing that people don't trust those mainstream outlets. Not only on the Republican side, it's been on the conservative side for a long time. But I'm noticing it even more on the Democrat side. Because Democrats, if they watch those mainstream outlets over and over and over again, they cannot see how Trump won. Because they constantly bash Trump. They constantly criticize Trump. I had never seen anything like it. I remember a lot of bashing of Bush. But I remember I saw this video of Fareed Zakaria on CNN, who's usually not too partisan, had a whole video presentation of all these things against Trump. And I'm like, man, I have never seen anything like this. So there's a lot of talk now about what the mainstream media does. And then you look on the left side, I played this on last week's show, the Young Turks, who are very liberal, very leftist, very out there, but they were going nuts as Trump started to win. And what they said was the same thing. They said they no longer will watch the mainstream media, and they will continue to bash the mainstream media. And he said they will destroy him. They will kill the mainstream media. So now you have both sides. We are becoming so polarized again, so our group over here, that, for one, I don't know where true journalism lies. Hopefully it'll still be out there on the internet. But it's very interesting that Trump's like, you know what? I'm just going to go around them. I'm just not going to deal with them and talk directly to the American people. And if you don't think that that can work, all you have to do is look to Reagan. Reagan was one of the first to do it on TV. He did addresses straight to the American people on TV, and it worked. Don't discount. This is a smart move. Tom Benson, you look like you have something to say.
Trust in mass media. A Gallup poll from September. Republicans, 14% trust the media. That's down from 32 in just 1 year.
Wow. Among
independents, 30%, down from 33. And among Democrats, 51%, just about half, down from 55% a year ago.
Wow, so it's still quite a bit from Democrats. Do you think it's going to change now that Trump won?
Yes, I think it's going to go down even further.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting because we talked before the show, and your first comments were, they've lost all credibility. They're totally gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because they were wrong. Look at the polling. you know?
Well, the polling wasn't too off. I mean,
well, they had Hillary winning by quite a bit, 90% chance of winning, and she lost.
Yeah, I remember that in the New York Times with their little chances of winning or whatever.
So you got to wonder did they put faith in those polls and printed it because they thought it was truthful, or do they publish that stuff just to demoralize the opposition? Oh, my vote doesn't count anyway, so I'm not even going to go to the polls.
And there's a lot of people who think that. Of course, now, does anyone else find it ironic as well that before the election, Trump was talking about it's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged, and now he won, and now you have the Democrats and liberals and Jill Stein saying
it's rigged.
Was that your Jill Stein impression?
That's it.
that was good. That was good. Yeah, that it's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged. But I thought Donald Trump's message was I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was great. I thought it was very presidential, and I think it's Kellyanne Conway. I think she's writing those and doing all of those. Now, the other take on the media, and I found this from Politico, and this is actually written by a conservative. He thinks the new problem is going to be the rise of the he calls it the alt-reality media, but it's the alt-right is what he's talking about. And I have a lot of problems with the alt-right. I could, specifically say there's a lot of nationalism. And when you have populism, nationalism, usually that still involves growing the government just in a different place. And I'm going to get to that more in the next hour when we talk economics. But he says that the conservative movement did not merely have a Donald Trump problem, it had a media problem. As Trump slouched toward the nomination, he was backed by a conservative media that had successfully created an alternative reality bubble around his candidacy. Now, I don't really believe that, but there were some out there who were not willing to criticize Trump like they should have. Now, not this show, not Beyond Reason. I'm truthful about everybody and everything. This is the voice of truth. Remember that. But he's basically saying, this is from a never-Trumper, but he's basically saying that Trump's victory means that most extreme and recklessly irresponsible voices on the right, the alt-right, are going to be empowered. They're going to have a direct line to the president, and now you're going to have the pendulum swing the other way, where the alt-right is going to be having all of these different things, and you're not going to get the truth from them either because they're just going to be trying to protect the president.
I don't know if you're going to swing and have vast power. They are going to have more influence, that's for sure. But what makes them, Breitbart and all the others that are out there, any worse or any better than Daily Cause and Media Matters?
Exactly. And what you're going to have is more and more people do exactly what you said. You're going to have more people one side go to Breitbart. You're going to have more and more people on the other side go to the Daily Cause. And we're going to become more and more polarized. And I don't know what CNN, MSNBC, all those other ones are going to be able to do. But it worries me a little bit because I don't want to give a lot of credit to like Alex Jones. I don't feel like he should become more mainstream. Am I the only one out there that thinks that? He's a little crazy, but he backed Trump a lot, and he's going to think he had more power. And you have other alt-right people out there that are going to think you have more power. So where does that leave me? Because I'm actually going to fight for conservatism. By the way, don't go to Breitbart anymore. Go to thedailywire.com, Ben Shapiro's site. Much, much better. Just pointing that out there. I don't know the guy, never met him, but I'm just pointing that out there. Okay, I'm going to end this hour with a special Thanksgiving message. I've done it in past shows. I'm going to end each hour with a special Thanksgiving message. We'll also take your calls and texts as well. You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear, telling you the difference between right and wrong. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We do this show every Friday, 7 to 9 p.m., right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and, of course, on BeyondReasonRadio.com. And if you miss any of the show, which I know some of you tune in and out, get the podcast of the show. Get it on the Beyond Reason Radio app, because there's a lot of important stuff I talk about throughout the whole show. And you don't want to miss any of it, and you can listen on your own time. So it's good stuff. So, by the way, you want to stay tuned with me through the next hour, because in the next hour I want to talk a little bit about Keith Ellison. Because Keith Ellison, the Muslim congressman from Minnesota, there's still talk about him becoming the DNC chairman of the Democrat National Committee. And other than the fact that he's an extreme leftist, there's some concerns I have about him that aren't really being talked about. And I found some audio of him from 2009 that really point this out. So we're going to get to that and look deep into that in the next hour. And so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. But I told you I had a special Thanksgiving message. I post this on my Facebook every year. It's posted on my blog, Facebook, all that stuff. And I figured I would read it for you. It's a story from Thanksgiving you haven't really thought about. And it's the first national Thanksgiving. And it was the first declaration of Thanksgiving given to the country, by the country, after independence. And I'll just read it from my blog here. It is late September. The year is 1777. The Congress of the States, who recently declared independence from the British, is meeting in a town called York, 100 miles from Philadelphia. Why were they meeting there? Well, September had been a brutal month for General Washington and his army. After losing the Battle of Brandywine in Delaware, the British would capture the capital of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. The Congress had no choice but to flee, and they ended up in York. With all the bad news, the Congress decided to have a secret meeting to determine whether there was still any hope of success against the British. There is no doubt that many there think it is best to cut their losses and try to negotiate a peace with the British, and who could blame them? But one man decides to stand up and encourage the Congress to continue the fight. His name is Samuel Adams. While Samuel Adams is known to most people in the U.S. today as a mere beer brand, Adams was actually one of the most influential people of the Revolutionary period. His group, the Sons of Liberty, would become the main protest group that would lead the people of America from mere complainers of the British to fighting for freedom against the British. Adams' speeches and writings for liberty would convince many Americans that it was time to be independent. When Adams stood up that night at the secret meeting of Congress, things might have seemed hopeless, but he would show them it was not. His words would become a rallying cry that would encourage everyone who believed in freedom and independence to fight on. Adams stands up and says this: "Let us awaken then and invite a different spirit, a spirit that shall inspire the people with confidence in themselves and in us, a spirit that will encourage them to persevere in this glorious struggle until their rights and liberties shall be established on a rock. We have proclaimed to the world our determination to die free men rather than live slaves. We have appealed to heaven for the justice of our cause, and in heaven we have placed our trust. Numerous have been the manifestations of God's providence in sustaining us. In the gloomy period of adversity, we had our cloud by day and pillar of fire by night. We have been reduced to distress, and the arm of omnipotence has raised us up. Let us still rely in humble confidence on him who is mighty to save. Good tidings will soon arrive. We shall never be abandoned by heaven while we act worthy of its aid and protection." After this, the Patriots would fight on, winning a major battle at Saratoga in late October that would help change the course of the war. On November 1st, after receiving the good news at Saratoga, Congress adopted a report drafted by none other than Samuel Adams. The report declared Thursday, December 18th, a day of thanksgiving to God, particularly in that he hath been pleased in so great a measure to prosper the means used for the support of our troops. That was the quote from it. This was the first Thanksgiving proclamation in the history of America. On this Thanksgiving, remember to whom our thanks go out to. Our founders understood that in order for us to succeed as a nation, we would need the help of Almighty God. Times are tough, but if we appeal to God, we will be able to overcome any obstacle. Remember to thank God for everything you will enjoy on Thanksgiving, including your family and country. Thanks be to God that He has blessed our nation, and may He continue to bless us for generations to come. I wanted to give you that Thanksgiving message. I wrote it a few years ago, and just point out, let's try to be like they were back then. In times of trouble, in times of distress, especially at the beginning of this country, they were thankful, but they were thankful to God. The first national days of Thanksgiving in this country that eventually would lead to Thanksgiving holiday was always a thanksgiving to our Creator, to God, for what He did for our country. So much now, we kind of forget that. It's become more a holiday of food. A lot of people even call it Turkey Day. But think how much blessings you have in your life every day, and especially on Thanksgiving, the ability to eat and be stuffed beyond belief on that day. That didn't come out of nowhere. In the history of man, the idea of something like that was unheard of. But it was possible in this country because we were blessed. And I just hope that we can take this Thanksgiving weekend, this holiday, to continue to remember why we were blessed and be those same people that during hard times, when we overcome our hard times, that we can still give thanks to our Creator. Because if we are not those people, I don't really want to know what we become in the long run. So I give a lot of credit to Samuel Adams back then. A lot of people say, oh, the founding fathers weren't Christian. Read the words of Samuel Adams. He believed in God and he believed in providence in our country. This is Beyond Reason Radio. We have one more hour to go. We have a lot more things to talk about. I'll end with another Thanksgiving message at the end of that hour. And, well, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I couldn't sleep. I had to listen to a call.
Happy Capitalism Day, everyone. Yes, a lot of people call it Black Friday, but I like to call it Capitalism Day because it is the day of capital. Is it not? I mean, what better way to describe this day with all the deals, with all the businesses, with all the competition than to call it Capitalism Day? Now, unfortunately, some people take Capitalism Day a little too far. There was actually someone who was killed in a Walmart parking lot over this, and they've had stampedes and stuff like they do every year. It's a little too far. I love capitalism, but come on, let's have our priorities, people. But I just Capitalism Day. Yesterday we gave thanks. We had family. We had a good time. We ate a lot of food. Today is Capitalism Day. Go out and shop and sell stuff. And I guess it goes through the whole weekend because you have Small Business Saturday, all that stuff. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Once again, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. This is the second hour of the show. We did an hour of the show before, and if you missed the first hour, it's already posted on Facebook Live. So you can go to Facebook Live, friend me on Facebook, or go to the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. You go there and watch it. Later on, I'm going to post the podcast of the entire 2 hours right on BeyondReasonRadio.com, or the best way to get the show is the Beyond Reason Radio app, which you can watch. You can listen to the show live, or you can listen to the podcast, or you can chat with me And just download it at the Google Play or Apple App Store. And, of course, thank you for Tom Benson, who is producing for me. I asked him earlier today because we weren't sure if the Gators were going to be on at this time, but they're not. So Beyond Reason Radio is on. So I asked Mr. Tom Benson to produce for me. So how are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine, getting ready for the Gator broadcast, which is coming up closer to the 10 o'clock hour.
Oh, okay. You have to stay for that, too?
No.
Oh, I was about to say.
I'm going to go home and watch it.
Oh, okay.
Fall asleep.
Now, how was your Thanksgiving? Did you eat a lot? Did you?
Excellent. No, I didn't eat a lot. I kind of watched myself.
Is Tom Benson on a diet? Is he trying to lose some weight?
He should be.
He should be. Key word there.
And the holiday season is what, 5 or 6 weeks here? So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to pack it on.
This is very true, because everywhere you go now during the holiday seasons, there's just sweets everywhere. Everywhere you go, sweets and gingerbread houses and candy canes, and I'm hungry now. All right, so I wanted to talk this hour about something really important, because there has been so much talk about Keith Ellison becoming the chairman of the Democrat National Committee, the DNC. And I've heard all this stuff that he's a far leftist. Now, if you don't know who that is, he is from the 5th District of Minnesota. He's a representative out there. He was the first ever Muslim to be elected to Congress, the first ever Muslim. And so he has a lot of takes, obviously, on Islam, on radical Islam, on the war on terror. And that's what I want to focus on, because I've talked a lot on this show about how the true war is the war of ideas against radical Islam, against political Islam, basically. The war of ideas, and it's a worldwide war of ideas. Just like we fought the war of ideas against communism, against the spread of communism in the Soviet Union and totalitarianism in the world, we are now against a war against a radical ideology, which is radical Islam. But Keith Ellison being talked about becoming the chairman of the DNC. So I found some interesting audio, and it's actually from 7 years ago, 2009. And it was because someone I respect a lot, I'm reading his book right now, The Struggle for Islam. His name is Zahudi Jasser. Now, Zahudi Jasser, he's on Fox News all the time, and he's with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. And he's talked a lot about this stuff, and I've played audio of him on this show many times. I respect him a lot. On this issue, he talks about the war of ideas. And remember, Zahudi Jasser is a Muslim himself, so it gains a lot of credibility. And I just recently read his book, and he talked a little bit about this. But in 2009, Zahudi Jasser spoke to Congress, Special Committee of Congress, on the issue of the war against terror, on the issue of the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and radical Islam. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to play his comments first, because Keith Ellison, criticizes Zahudi Jasser for his comments. But this is what Zahudi Jasser said in 2009 on his whole idea of the problems of radical Islam. This is what he said.
If you look at the core ideologies that are feeding this, it's political Islam. And until Muslims can recognize that we need to separate mosque and state and bring Islam through an enlightenment and a reformation process, just like Christianity separated the role of the Church of England in Europe, we are not going to solve the problem of terrorism. The FBI and Homeland Security are going to continue chasing their tails for years as long as we do not separate mosque and state. So the problem is not terror.
So what he's talking about, and he says a lot more in this committee. I don't have time to play the whole thing. He says so much great stuff. But he talked about in this book as well. He talks about what the real problem is in terms of the war on terror. And this is, remember, he's a Muslim saying this, is that you have a radical ideology spreading across the world in what he calls political Islam. And what political Islam, radical Islam, all the same thing, is what they are trying to do and actually have done in certain parts of the world now with ISIS, is they believe that religion and the state have to be the same thing. So they believe in setting up an Islamic state. So if there's another state that exists anywhere in the world that is not an Islamic state, political Islam, people who believe in that sect of Islam and that radical Islamic ideology, they're against it. So America is an enemy of radical Islam, of so-called political Islam, and that is why there's terrorists. That's why terrorism spread with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and other groups as well, Boko Haram, because they are not going to be happy until Islam is not only the central religion in the world, but is the central state in the world. Obviously, that can't work with Americanism, because Americanism believes in freedom of religion. So Zahudi Jasser talks about how true good Muslims have to stand up against those radicals and talk about reform in a lot of the Islamic communities and Islamic countries, and talk about how there needs to be a separation of mosque and state, because this is the biggest problem with a lot of these Islamic countries that promote terrorism, is they can't separate that. So they want to spread it by military force against any other country that doesn't believe in their radical ideology and doesn't believe that it should be promoted by the state. So when Zahudi Jasser says stuff like that, you would think that most reasonable Americans would believe him, would say, that's a great point, would talk to him, try to get advice from him. How do we combat this radical ideology? Because that's what Zahudi Jasser wants most. He wants to reform a lot of Islam, saying, look, too many Muslims out there want this Islamic state and want a caliphate that spreads across the world. We don't want that as Americans, obviously, and good Muslims shouldn't want that either. So Zahudi Jasser says this. This is from 2009. And then we go to Keith Ellison, the Muslim congressman from Minnesota. Keith Ellison, who now wants to be the DNC chairman, he says he criticizes Zahudi Jasser immensely for what he said there in his points against radical Islam. This is what Keith Ellison said in 2009 in that congressional hearing.
I think he first commits the mistake of overgeneralization and emphasizing and selecting out one group and representing it as the entire problem when it clearly is not. That is selecting Muslims out when, in fact, religious fanaticism which motivates people to commit acts of violence is a universal problem found in every faith and is a serious problem. And, of course, there are Muslims who are guilty of this, but they're not only Muslims guilty of this, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. So he commits that mistake of overgeneralization and moves on to commit another mistake and says, well, the solution then is to police thought, which is about as un-American as I can possibly imagine, by saying we've got to attack an ideology. I think it's fine to debate an ideology, but to employ the instrumentality of the state to try to suppress the way people believe in a country dedicated to the idea of freedom of expression, freedom of association, no establishment of state religion, the right to petition their government for grievances, the right to a free press. To advocate such a thing in a country such as ours, I think reveals a startling lack of understanding about civics.
If there's anyone who lacks understanding about civics, it is Keith Ellison there. There are so many things he says there that he totally misses the point when it comes to our enemy of radical Islam. And this is because he's a Muslim caught up in political correctness and he's afraid of offending all Muslims by going after this radical ideology. First thing, he criticizes Zahudi Jasser for overgeneralization about Muslims. Zahudi Jasser is a Muslim, so he can't be overgeneralizing. But are you overgeneralizing when you say that there is a radical religious ideological sect of Islam that is causing a lot of problems in the world? How is that an overgeneralization? Because it exists. You're talking thousands and actually millions of people in the world, especially in the Middle East and those Middle Eastern countries, that believe in that radical ideology. And Zahudi Jasser is trying to be courageous, and he is a Muslim, standing up for good Muslim and the good Muslim faith and saying we have to combat this ideology if we want to defeat them in this war. So he's saying we need to combat this ideology. Keith Ellison says, oh, you're just being overgeneralization. Oh, all religions have terrorists in them. Really? I understand that can happen. I understand, and Keith Ellison talks about this later, I understand that there have been Christians that have caused atrocities, that in the past, in the world, yes, Christians have caused atrocities, but we're not talking about in the past. We're not talking about history. We're talking about right now. And right now, we have a problem of millions of people in this radical Islamic sect causing these issues. And to say that's an overgeneralization and to say, well, it happens in all religions. No, it's not happening in all religions. It's not happening now in all religions. It's happening right now in a radical sect of Islam. And this person, Keith Ellison, doesn't want to address it. He wants to pretend like it doesn't exist, and that's naive, and it's foolish. The second thing, he talks about, he wants to police a thought. He wants to use the state against an ideology. This is the same Keith Ellison who wants to use the state to promote the ideology of global warming and climate change and how to force that belief on us and how we need to do all these things by the state because the Democrats love to use the state to promote their ideologies. He wants to use all that to promote the ideology of climate change and environmentalism. He has no problem then with the state going against an ideology. But not only that, but what did we do in the Cold War? What did we do against Nazism? Or what did we do in the American Revolution? It was more than fighting against an army. It was fighting against a radical ideology. That doesn't mean we police. It's funny. It's usually ones like Keith Ellison that want to police thought. That if you criticize any sect of Islam, any Muslims at all, they're the ones who want to shut you down. But what did we do in all these things? We fought not only that, but we fought an ideology. We fought an ideology of oppression and totalitarianism in the revolution, in the Cold War, around the world, and we did it with the state. And it was more than just military. It was promoting American values, promoting freedom of religion, promoting free markets and freedom. And we did that, and that's an ideological war, and we were willing to do it then. We have to be willing to do it now if we want to win. And that doesn't mean shut down all speech. No one's saying that. Zahudi Jasser doesn't believe that. We're not saying shut down all speech, but we're saying fight the war of ideas. Because it's a war of ideas. Whether you like it or not, it's a war of ideas. And we have to be willing to fight the war of ideas. And you have a good Muslim like Zahudi Jasser who wants to fight the war of ideas in his own Islamic community. And he's pro-American, pro-freedom, pro-separation of church and state. And you have Keith Ellison, who's so politically correct Democrat that he can't even join along with that. So other than the fact that he's a radical leftist and all this other stuff, do you really want that guy to be the chairman of the Democrat Party? I say, sure, why not? I'll ruin your party. But just some points that I had to go about Keith Ellison that I happened to find today that a lot of people are not talking about. That guy is not willing to fight the war against terror and the war against radicalism. Ain't going to happen. More politically correct talk from another Democrat. Just saying. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. A lot more to talk about, and we will be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime.
Oh, wait until I get to this next story here. It's Beyond Reason is what it is. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. And you can give us a call, 407-916-5400, or text to 23680 if you have any comments on anything we've talked about. Make sure that if you missed any of the show and missed any of the important stuff we've talked about, especially in the last segment, which I think is really important, catch the podcast of the show after the show. You can catch the whole show And then usually there's a share button, one of those share buttons on social media that we all love. If you could push that for me, I'd appreciate it. That would be good because I don't have some kind of multimedia empire behind me. It's just me and a microphone. Just saying, just talking to you. So you can text 23680. So I found this very interesting, or beyond reason. The Oxford Dictionary, every year they release a word of the year. Now, I feel like this doesn't work because it's not really a word, but they say it's a word. And this probably defines where we are as a country. Maybe better than anything else. Just think about this. What's the word of the year according to Oxford dictionaries? It's post-truth. Post-truth is the word of the year. For one, I didn't know that was a word. Post is a word, truth is a word, but they have post-truth is apparently the word of the year in the Oxford Dictionary. They define that word as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. Yeah. That does kind of describe where we are. There's way too many people out there. I could see maybe why they put this as the word of the year on both sides who love the word post-truth. Let me read that again. Relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. I got this, by the way. I got this from cnsnews.com. It says, the guy writing this says, I can hardly think of a better description of where we are right now as a culture. In fact, for those of us who spent years calling out what Pope Benedict called the dictatorship of relativism, that is a great way to put that. I liked Pope Benedict. Everyone hated him. He was like my favorite pope. That is a great way to put that. The dictatorship of relativism. Everyone loves this new communist pope, but I liked the pope before. But he said, but the concept of post-truth is a bit different from garden variety relativism. It doesn't discount the existence of truth. Rather, a post-truth society is one in which truth takes a back seat to emotions. It's so funny how true that is. When you talk about things like Black Lives Matter, or you talk about things like free trade and all that stuff, facts don't matter. In fact, people will tell me statistics don't matter. Facts don't matter. This is how I feel and what I see. So there are a lot of people, actually, that live in this post-truth world. He continues on. For example, the meltdown among what many are calling the snowflakes on college campuses over President-elect Trump is the most obvious example. Despite exit polls showing that a huge percentage of eligible millennial voters stayed home, which is even more beyond reason to me. If you really believe that this was such a pivotal election and that the future of the country was at stake and all of this stuff, wouldn't you go out and vote to stop it? You have no right to protest and complain. They found out that like half the cast of Hamilton, Hamilton criticized Trump. Half the cast of them didn't even vote. What is, what do you mean? If you thought it was important, if I really thought that if I was some, crazy leftist and I really thought Trump was the next Hitler or something like they believe, and then he's going to round up Hispanics, Muslims, and gays and put them in camps, if I really thought that, I guarantee you I would show up at the ballot box and vote against him. Now, obviously, I'm not stupid and I don't believe those things, but it's I just thought that was amazing. But anyways, I continue on. He says, He says that's the best example. Despite exit polls, they didn't show up. Their schools are sending letters of condolences, canceling exams, even offering hot chocolate and hugs from administrators. Faced with a reality that contradicts what they feel should have happened, many just can't cope. He talks about a post-truth culture. It is kind of where we are. A post-truth culture also leads us to equate disagreement with hatred. Is that not true? And this goes back to what I've talked about on previous shows. We are in that state in the pendulum, in a we society, an us society, where everything, it's either you're with us or you're against us. That is the mindset of everybody in this country now. You connect yourself based on the group you're a part of, and then if you're not a part of that group, you're against us, and it's hatred. And it's part of what's called the post-truth culture. I think that's very interesting. He says the continuing on the story in CNS News, he says the post-truth culture can also lead us to ignore reality altogether. I've made it clear on Breakpoint that I find some of our next president's passwords, especially about racial minorities and women, troubling. But in this post-truth, post-fact, post-reality environment, many have hijacked legitimate concerns in order to play the victim. He says, just look at the panicked reaction from gay and lesbian activists who are behaving as if Donald Trump plans to persecute their community. The facts don't support that. In fact, Trump is probably the most pro-gay rights, homosexual, LGBTQ president-elect there has ever been in the Republican Party. And yet they're going nuts, thinking he's going to persecute them. How does that make any sense? It's beyond reason, but we are in the post-truth culture. He continues on, and of course, post-truth culture dominates Facebook and Twitter feeds. Just look at the epidemic of fake news that marred this election. So the Oxford Dictionary said the word of the year is post-truth. Post-truth. Do you agree with that? I think I kind of do agree with that. I think Tom Benson agrees with that. You kind of look like you agreed with that. Post-truth, even though I didn't know it was a word until now.
Well, the two things that bother me is what one you mentioned. The fact is that if you're not with us, you're against us, and if you're against us, you're a racist.
Exactly.
The other thing that bothers me is,
and just to say one thing though, I do find it on the other side. Like with diehard Trump supporters, it's the same way. If you are not full on board with Donald Trump, you are an enemy of the state or something.
Right, and it's coming from the same group that say you must be inclusive. Well, they're not inclusive at all unless you think like us.
I know. It's the, if you're not with us, you're against us mentality. It exists all over this country, and it's probably not going away anytime soon. I'm just saying. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We have a lot more to talk about, and we will be right back.
You know what's Beyond Reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio.
Yes, Beyond Reason Radio is back on this Capitalism Day. Black Friday is now Capitalism Day. Spread the word. I am starting a trend. Beyond Reason Radio is the first place to say it. Black Friday will now be considered Capitalism Day. This will be Capitalism Weekend because really that's what it is. I mean, that's what it is. Just think about it. All the competition, all the business, and I love it, by the way. I love it. I love business. Calvin Coolidge said the business of America is business. I love it. Why are we so anti-business in this country? And speaking of that, I'm actually going to get into some business talk, some economic talk. By the way, I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. This is Beyond Reason Radio. You know what this is. You know who I am. I'm sure you've heard me. This is Yaffee from the morning show talking with Bud. But this is Orlando Smart Talk Radio, Beyond Reason Radio. And you can, by the way, call or text to 23680. So, I was a little sad when I read what I'm about to read to you guys. I was a little sad because I really like this guy and I respect this guy. And I've actually interviewed him on several occasions. And I've read his recent book, Fueling Freedom, about how we need energy exploration in this country. It's great. Former Reagan advisor. He's now a Trump advisor. He's a noted conservative. Stephen Moore, economist with the Club for Growth. I think he's been with Freedom Works and a bunch of other things. He apparently is turned to populism instead of conservatism, saying the Republican Party is now becoming the populist party. This makes me very sad. Why? We're getting sucked up into populism, which is really just a kind of progressivism, which is really just another way to grow government, just in a different way, to get government in the way just in different areas. And it's not good. I'm for limiting the size of government because it needs to be done in cutting spending. Has to be done for the future of this country and the future of our economy. But according to The Hill, Stephen Moore told Republican lawmakers assembled at their closed-door whip meeting that they no longer were part of the conservative party of Ronald Reagan. This makes me very sad. I hope it's not true. Just as Reagan converted the GOP into a conservative party, Trump has converted the GOP into a populist working-class party. He says in some ways this will be good for conservatives and in other ways possibly frustrating. You think. It will definitely be frustrating. And one shocked attendee aghast said, for God's sake, it's Stephen Moore. He's the guy who started Club for Growth. He's Mr. Supply Side Economics. Moore tried to explain his abandonment of conservative principles by claiming his traveling around the Rust Belt states as he supported Trump altered his views, saying it turned me more into a populist. Having spent the last 3 or 4 months on the campaign trail, it opens your eyes to the everyday anxieties and financial stress people are facing. I'm pro-immigration and pro-trade, but we better make sure as we pursue these policies we're not creating economic undertow in these areas. I told you, by the way, that's why Trump got elected. That really what this election was about was globalism versus nationalism. And I told you, once again, like in the last segment, we're in a post-truth society. Facts don't matter. Free trade has helped this country, but it left some areas behind. And those people in those areas don't care about the economic facts. And when someone like Trump comes along, a nationalist says, I'm going to make America great again, they look at it as, oh, he's going to bring all these manufacturing jobs back. Oh, he's going to make us post-World War II again. Oh, he's going to have tariffs so they're not taking all our jobs to China. Which, it's not going to happen, people. And by the way, we have more manufacturing output now than we did then. But it's just different. It's high-end manufacturing. But I'm just pointing this out that we're becoming the populist party, and it's not going to work, especially because in order to become a populist party, you have to have tariffs, and you're going to have to grow government. And another thing that Trump wants to do is spend $1 trillion in infrastructure. That's like the Democrats' dream. And I talked about on the last show how Bernie Sanders is against it. Why? You should love it. So I was a little upset when I saw this by Stephen Moore, but he vindicated himself a little bit because I found some audio of him on Fox News. And he talked about, why the economy, why the markets are booming, the stock markets and everything, and what he thinks will be good for the future. And he talks about this infrastructure spending, which he actually is not very excited about, which is a good thing. So he's vindicating himself a little bit, but I was a little worried. This is what he said.
Question to you was going to be, we've known each other for a long time. I read your stuff in the Wall Street Journal for a long time, and I never saw or heard of Steve Moore ever excited about an infrastructure spending bill.
Right. Well, look, I'm not excited about infrastructure spending. I think the top priorities are the ones I just mentioned.
Hold on, Steve, but you say you're not excited about it, and you say that's not what's driving the market. Metals are way up, conceivably because of infrastructure spending. Construction way up because of infrastructure spending. That's a lot of what's driving this rally.
Okay, point taken, but I would simply say this. Government spending does not cause economic growth. We're not going to get richer by having a lot more government spending. Certainly, we need more roads and highways, and we need to fix our bridges and so on. No question. Donald Trump has made that a priority. But I don't think it's the highest priority, though. I really think if you're going to get America moving again, you got to get businesses healthy again by rolling back the regulations and taxes. That's really my only point.
Thank you, Steve. See, he vindicated himself a little bit because he made some good points there. Government spending is not going to grow the economy, especially when they spend it on stupid infrastructure stuff that we might not even need in 20 or 30 years when we have driverless cars and flying drones and super loop trains and all this stuff. And we were against it when Obama did a stimulus package of less than $1 trillion. Now we have $1 trillion. Oh, it's done through tax credits and all this stuff. Trust me, it's still them spending money. And now we're all for it? Now it's conservative? Oh, we need to rebuild the infrastructure. I've talked about stats on this show before. The infrastructure is not crumbling. It is in certain areas, and mostly it's a state issue. The federal government does help, but most of it's done by the states. But because we changed the role of government, they don't have the money to spend it on that. So, but Stephen Moore, and this next guy I have here, he was asked about spending. How are we going to cut spending? Which I wish Trump would talk about it because it's so important, especially for my generation. This is what he said.
The big question is, how do you pay for all of this? You've got a huge infrastructure spending bill. You've got huge tax cuts. The president-elect has already said he's not going to touch entitlement reform. And as somebody is a supply-side guy and a Club for Growth guy, as I know you are, the idea of huge deficits and an even larger federal debt isn't something you're okay with either.
No, look, I think Donald Trump agrees with this. The first priority has to be to get the government, get the growth rate of the economy going. I mean, we're growing at 1.5% for the last year. The growth rate for this recovery has been this anemic 2%. We believe with our growth policies, we can get growth up by 4 to 5%. Now, if you do that, you start reducing the deficit. You put more people to work. They pay more taxes. You have companies that are healthier. You attract businesses to come back out of Europe and out of Ireland and out of China, Mexico, back to the United States. Those are all tax receipts that you're going to get when they start producing here. So growth is the key, number one. Number two, we are going to cut government spending. There's no question about it. Government spending is going to come down.
Where?
Some areas.
Where?
See,
you're not going to cut entitlements, which is an
question.
enormous part of government spending. You say you're going to rebuild the military, so you're not going to touch defense spending. Where does it come from?
Well, I'll give you just two examples. Number one, Obamacare. Obamacare is a $1 trillion entitlement. Now, we are going to cover people with our health care plan, but we can do it at a much lower cost than Obamacare. Yeah, I think you could possibly save $1 trillion over 10 years by having a more sensible health care system. Second of all, you've heard this, Leland, we've talked about it. It's called the penny plan. Every single agency of government is going to be reduced by a penny each year for 5 years. Now, that may not seem like a lot. That is a penny for every dollar that they spend. If you do that, you're saving trillions of dollars over the next 10 to 12 years.
It's a whole lot of pennies to put in a piggy bank, Steve.
It's a big government.
I know, it's a big piggy bank.
Okay, so I do like the idea of cutting Obamacare, even though it seems like he's qualifying it a little bit there. I could talk more. You know me on this show. I could talk an hour about Obamacare. The whole thing, it's so dumb, is like, oh, we're going to still cover people. We had something even before Obamacare that was meant to cover people who couldn't afford it. It was called Medicaid. That's what Medicaid was for. If Medicaid, it's never good enough. Do you notice that? We have to have Social Security. That's not good enough. Then we have to have Medicare. That's not good enough. We have to have Medicaid. That's not good enough. We have to have S-chip program. That's not good enough. Now we have to cover maternity leave. That won't be good enough. Now we have to cover overtime. It's never going to be enough. Ever. The government, they will always use it as an excuse to grow. But he talks about we need to cut Obamacare. That will be cut spending. But I'm really not seeing enough from Trump and his administration about cutting spending. And it has to be something we do. Now, why is that? Well, Stephen Moore said it earlier. Because we're now the populist party. And populists don't care about cutting spending. They care about increasing spending to grow the economy. Because they think that's what grows the economy. I really hope this doesn't kill conservatism in the Republican Party. It looks bad. And I've said before, even if Trump wins, which he did, that conservatism will have to be rebuilt from the ground up by young people. And I will try to be a leader in that effort. Who knows? But it's gonna take a lot of work to grow conservatism. But it worries me when a noted conservative small government economist talks about the Republican Party now being the party of populism. It's just another form of progressivism. And they're going to spend and spend and spend. And who's going to pay for that? Well, my generation and you. Someone's going to pay for it. You can grow the economy all you want. We're almost $20 trillion in debt. I don't care how much you grow the economy. It's not gonna pay for all this, especially if you continue to spend more. Just pointing that out there. All right, I'm going to end the show with another Thanksgiving message here on Capitalism Day. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. This is the voice of truth, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. And we have talked a lot of great issues on this Capitalism Day. It's what I'm calling Black Friday. Spread the word. And if you miss any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast of the whole show. Make sure to friend me on Facebook as well. Just search Michael Yaffee, Yaffee on Facebook, and I'll friend you. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. That is Beyond Reason in the letter R. Always posting stuff that gets a lot of great conversation on Facebook. I'm usually surprised how many comments I get. So I thought I would end the show with another Thanksgiving message that I wrote. I actually wrote this in 2009, titled "Thanks Be to God." And it starts with part of the Bible here. This is from Exodus. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and to indulge in revelry. This is me talking now. This is how the Hebrew people reacted shortly after God freed them from the Egyptians. Many of us have heard this story before, but sometimes it's easy to ignore the significance of this story. The Hebrews were enslaved by the most powerful empire of the time. The Hebrews were a small, simple people who had no place to call their own. There was no chance that they could have won their freedom on their own. It was only with the help of God that they were able to escape. Then when they finally win their freedom, how do they react? By making another god out of their own hands. This obviously led to punishment by God of the Hebrew people who had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Fast forward thousands of years to 1783. Another small, simple people had just won their freedom from the most powerful empire of that time period. The United Colonies, under the command of General Washington, defeated the powerful British Empire and eventually established the United States of America. Most of the Founding Fathers believed that without the help of God, there is no way they could have defeated the British Army. In fact, the first thing George Washington did in his first inaugural address as President of the United States was thank God for what he had done. But in 1783, the acting Congress put out a declaration in which they declared the 28th of November a day of thanksgiving to God for blessing the United States. And you can Google, and there's actually a picture of that proclamation. It was a broadside. It was done by the Congress under the Articles of Confederation. That was the first Thanksgiving to God of that government. It said, "Do hereby to the inhabitants of these states in general to observe and request the federal states to interpose their authority in appointing and commanding the observation of Thursday, the 28th of November, next, as a solemn day of thanksgiving to God for all his mercies." After this, the United States became the most prosperous nation in the history of mankind. The question I have for you today is, who are we today? We have so many blessings that we cannot even count them all. How many of you have thanked God today for those blessings? Unfortunately, many of us today feel like we are entitled to this. The truth is, all of this was a gift from God. So we have a choice. We can be like the Hebrews who were not thankful and walk through the wilderness before finding the promised land, or we can be like the founders of our country who thanked God the first chance they had and led this great country to amazing prosperity. The choice is yours. And I'll end with a verse here from Psalm chapter 69. I am in pain and distress. May your salvation, O God, protect me. I will praise God's name in song and glorify him with thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was yesterday. We often talk about what we're thankful for. We often talk about food, usually, and how stuffed we are. A lot of you might have talked politics. I don't know. I might have avoided it if I were you. But, make sure to thank God, who made it all possible. It's a gift from God, just like his son Jesus was a gift for our sins. The ultimate gift. And we'll talk more about that, of course, around Christmas. But I, for one, thank God for the blessings he has in this country. And if hopefully we will continue to be a people that will do that. Pray for our country. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, Beyond Reason Radio. I'll catch you guys next time.
Oh, well,